I never thought I would be the one keeping her secret. Not after everything we've been through together. My name is Eleanor. I am Elena's older sister. I watched her grow up, helped her with homework, dried her tears when boys broke her heart. I always believed she would have the kind of love that lifted her, not one that pulled her into the dark. But now, I carry something I never wanted to carry. And I can't tell our parents. I can't tell anyone. So I'm telling you. I found out by accident. I wasn't looking for anything. I was only trying to charge my phone in the kitchen when her phone buzzed beside mine. I looked at the screen without thinking. A message appeared. It said, "I miss you already. Tonight was perfect. Love you." I didn't recognize the number, but I knew something was wrong. My sister Elena had always been the careful one. She was the kind of person who made lists for everything and double-checked her work. She was beautiful and intelligent. She had a good job in design and a modern apartment that our parents helped her buy. Everyone said she was the pride of the family, and I believed it. I was proud of her too. We grew up together like best friends. There were only 2 of us. I was the older one, 5 years ahead. When our mother got sick, I helped raise Elena. She cried in my arms as a child, told me her secrets in the dark, and trusted me with everything. So when I saw that message, my stomach felt tight. Something had changed, and I didn't know how to reach her anymore. For a few days, I said nothing. I told myself that maybe it was nothing important. Maybe she was seeing someone and didn't want to tell me yet. Maybe it was just new. But I kept thinking about it. She had told me once that she wasn't dating anyone. She said she was too busy with work. I remembered that clearly. One evening, I went to her apartment to drop off some books. She wasn't home. I waited in the kitchen and drank a glass of water. There was a photo on the fridge. Her and a man I didn't know. They were standing close, smiling. He looked older. Something about his eyes made me uneasy. I felt my chest grow heavy again. Later that week, I invited her to my place. She came with a bottle of wine and her usual cheerful voice. But I could tell she was distracted. Her phone was always near her hand. She checked it when she thought I wasn't looking. I wanted to ask her about the man. I wanted to ask about the message, but I didn't know how. That night, after she left, I sat on the sofa for a long time. I remembered her as a child with small feet running across our garden. I remembered how she cried when her first pet died, and how she used to write poems in her school notebooks. I couldn't connect that little girl with the woman I saw now, hiding something behind her smile. The next morning, I couldn't stop myself. I searched for the number from the message. I didn't mean to be that kind of sister, but I needed to know. I found a name. I found a photo. My heart dropped. The man was married. There were pictures of him and his wife on social media. They had 2 children. The oldest one looked about 10. I closed my laptop and felt the tears in my eyes. I had to sit down. My little sister was in a relationship with someone else's husband. I didn't understand. She didn't need this. She could have anyone. She had everything. Why would she choose a man who already belonged to someone else? For 2 nights, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about whether to tell her or not. I imagined how our parents would feel if they knew. They spoke about her with so much pride. Our father often said she was his joy, his reason to smile. He still called her his little star. What would it do to him if he found out? On the 3rd night, I called her. I asked her to meet me for coffee. She said yes. She always trusted me. That made it harder. When we sat at the cafe, I looked into her eyes and saw the little girl again. But I had to say something. I couldn't stay silent anymore. I told her I knew about the man. I told her he was married. At first, she didn't say anything. She stared at the table. Then she looked up and said, "Yes, I know." Her voice was calm, but her eyes were sad. I asked her why. I asked her what she was thinking. She told me she loved him. I wanted to understand. I really did. But nothing made sense. I asked if she believed he would leave his wife. She said he promised. She said he would. I didn't want to argue, but I had to say something. I told her that many men make promises they never keep. I told her she was better than this. She grew quiet. Then she said I didn't understand. She said love doesn't always make sense. I agreed with that, but still, I felt afraid for her. I told her that love should never begin with lies. She didn't reply. She stood up and said she had to go. I watched her walk away, and I didn't know if I had helped or hurt her. That night, I sat with my husband in silence. He asked what was wrong, and I told him everything. He listened carefully and said I had done the right thing. But why did it feel so bad? I wanted to help her. I only wanted to protect her, but I wasn't sure if she saw it that way. The days after that were quiet. She didn't call. She didn't visit. I felt the space growing between us. Every time my phone buzzed, I hoped it was her, but it wasn't. I wondered what she was doing. If she was still seeing him. If she believed he would keep his promise. If she believed in something that wasn't real. One evening, I passed by her apartment and saw the lights were off. I stood outside for a moment, thinking about ringing the bell. But I didn't. I went home and sat in my kitchen, drinking tea in the dark. I looked at the family photo on the fridge. She was smiling in that photo. I missed that version of her. That weekend, our parents invited us for dinner. I went alone. They asked where she was. I said she was busy. They believed me. I watched my father laugh over something small and my mother bring out her favorite cake. They were happy. They didn't know what was happening. I didn't have the heart to break their joy. That night I cried again. I felt helpless. I was losing my sister, and I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't want to force her. I didn't want to fight, but I couldn't support her choice either. It felt like watching someone walk toward a wall and not being allowed to shout. Before I share the rest of my story, I need to know, where are you listening from? Knowing someone hears me, understands me, gives me strength. I didn't hear from Elena for several days. My calls went to voicemail and my messages stayed unread. I told myself she was busy with work, but deep down I knew that wasn't the reason. She was avoiding me. Maybe I had said too much. Maybe I should have stayed quiet. But I couldn't take back my words, and I didn't want to lie to her either. Each morning, I checked my phone first thing, hoping to see her name. Each night, I looked at the photo of us on the wall beside my bed. It was from last summer, at the lake. She had her arm around me and we were both laughing. That felt like a different time. I didn't know how we had grown so far apart in just a few months. I kept her secret. Our parents didn't know. My husband didn't ask again. But I was holding something heavy. I felt it every day. When I smiled, it felt fake. When I spoke to friends, I kept my answers short. I couldn't share the truth, not even with people who loved me. I was afraid of their judgment. But more than that, I was afraid of losing my sister. One evening, I was out buying groceries when I saw Elena's car parked outside a small restaurant. At first, I didn't think much of it. But then I saw him. The man from the photo on her fridge. He was sitting across from her inside. I stopped walking. They looked close. Her eyes were soft, and his hand was on hers across the table. I stood there for a long moment, then turned away. I couldn't watch anymore. Back at home, I sat in the car for 10 minutes before going inside. My husband opened the door and asked if everything was okay. I smiled and nodded. But my hands were cold and my chest felt tight. I didn't know how long this could go on. I felt like I was watching a slow storm build and I couldn't stop it. A few days later, Elena finally called. Her voice was calm, but there was a distance I hadn't heard before. She said she wanted to come over. I told her, of course. I made her favorite tea, the one with lemon and mint, and waited in the living room. When she arrived, she looked tired. Her eyes were darker underneath, and her smile didn't reach her face. She sat down slowly and wrapped her hands around the cup. We sat in silence for a minute. Then she said, "You don't need to worry about me." I looked at her and said nothing at first. I wanted to ask so many things. Was she still seeing him? Did she really believe he would leave his wife? But I held back. Instead, I said, "I miss you." She didn't respond right away. Then she said, "I miss you too." She didn't talk about him, and I didn't ask. I wanted to, but I also didn't want her to leave again. So we sat and drank tea, talking about work and the news and old family stories. It wasn't much, but it was something. At least she was here. After she left, I felt worse. Not because of anything she said, but because I saw the pain in her eyes. She was trying to hide it, but I knew. She was not happy. She was caught in something she couldn't control, and she didn't want to admit it. Or maybe She didn't want to believe it yet. The following week, our cousin had a birthday party. Elena came too. She smiled and hugged people and laughed at jokes. But I watched her closely. There were moments when she looked far away, like her thoughts were somewhere else. She checked her phone often. Every time it buzzed, she turned her body slightly away from the group to read it. No one noticed. But I did. Later that night after the party, I called her. I told her I was glad she came. She thanked me. Then I asked gently, "Are you okay?" There was a pause. Then she said, "Yes, just tired." I wanted to say more, but I let it go. Weeks passed. Summer turned into autumn. Our trees began to lose their leaves, and the evenings grew cold. Elena and I spoke only once or twice a week now. When she came over, she didn't stay long. When we talked, she never mentioned him. It was like he didn't exist. But I knew better. One night she came by without calling. Her face was pale, and her hands were shaking. She said, "Can I stay for a while?" I nodded and led her to the sofa. I wrapped her in a blanket and made tea. She didn't talk much, just sat quietly and stared at the floor. After a while, I asked, "Did something happen?" She looked at me. Her eyes were full of tears. Then she nodded. "He was supposed to come tonight," she whispered. "He told me he would. He promised, but he didn't show up. And now he's not answering my calls." I sat beside her and took her hand. It was cold and thin. She didn't look at me. She said, "Maybe he's just busy. Maybe something came up." But even as she said it, I could hear the doubt in her voice. She was trying to protect herself, trying not to feel the truth too soon. I didn't say much. I didn't say, "I told you so." I didn't say, "Leave him." I only said, "I'm here." That night, she stayed over. She fell asleep on my couch, still wearing her coat. I watched her breathe, slow and quiet. In that moment, she looked like the little girl I once held after nightmares. The same girl who used to run to me when she scraped her knee. My heart ached for her. In the morning, she left early. She said she had to go home and get ready for work. I asked if she was okay. She said she was fine. But I knew she wasn't. That week, she didn't call. I sent her 2 messages, but there was no reply. I told myself to be patient. I reminded myself that she needed time. But it hurt. I felt like I was losing her again. And this time, maybe for good, one evening, our father called me. He asked if Elena was okay. He said she seemed quiet lately, and he was worried. I told him she was busy with work. He believed me, but the guilt was heavy. I was hiding something big from him. I was hiding my sister's heartbreak. Later that night, I sat by the window and watched the rain. I thought about calling her again, but I didn't. I was afraid of pushing too hard. I was afraid she would shut me out completely. A few days later, I got a message from her. It said, "Can I come over?" My heart jumped. I wrote back, "Yes, anytime." When she arrived, she looked different, not just tired, defeated. Her eyes were red. She sat at the kitchen table and said nothing for a while. I waited. Then finally she spoke. Her voice was small. "It's over," she said. "He told me he can't leave his family. He said he thought he could, but he can't. He said I was important, but not more than his children." I said nothing. I let her speak. She looked at me with broken eyes. "I believed him," she said. "All this time, I thought he would choose me, but he didn't. I was just a break in his life. I was something he wanted, not someone he would fight for." Tears ran down her face. I reached out and held her hand. It felt small in mine. I said softly, "You are more than someone's secret. You deserve to be loved in the light, not in the dark." She nodded, but she said nothing more. That night, she stayed again. As I lay in bed, I thought about everything: the pain, the silence, the secrets, and the love, the deep love that still lived between us. I knew her healing would take time, but at least now she had taken the first step. She had let go. After that night, something changed in Elena. She still looked tired, and sometimes her eyes were red from crying, but she no longer waited for messages. She no longer checked her phone every 5 minutes. She stopped talking about him, not because she was hiding, but because she was finally trying to move on. She stayed at my place for a few days. We didn't talk much about the past. We cooked together, watched simple shows, and cleaned the kitchen like we used to when we were younger. It felt good to have her close again. I didn't ask questions. I knew she would speak when she was ready. One evening, we were sitting on the floor folding laundry. She picked up one of her sweaters, held it close for a second, and said, "I gave him this once. He said he loved soft things." Then she folded it slowly and added, "I'm not giving him anything again. Not even memories." I looked at her and saw how hard she was trying to be strong. Our parents still didn't know. They believed Elena had been working hard and was simply tired. I let them think that. They loved her so much. If they found out the truth, I wasn't sure how they would react. Maybe they would be angry. Maybe they would blame her. Or maybe they would just be sad. The kind of sadness that doesn't speak but lives in the eyes. One day, Elena said she wanted to go back to her apartment. She needed to return to her own space, her own life. I helped her pack her things. As she picked up her bag, she looked around my home and said, "Thank you. You gave me a place to feel safe again." I hugged her and said, "You'll always have that." In the days that followed, we talked more often. She called in the mornings, sent short messages during lunch, and sometimes asked me to meet her after work. I could hear something different in her voice. She still felt pain, but she was no longer letting it control her. That gave me hope. One Friday evening, I invited her for dinner. She brought a pie she had baked, something she hadn't done in a long time. We sat at the table, eating slowly and talking about our childhood. At one point, she said, "Do you remember how I used to talk about getting married under the big tree near Grandma's house?" I smiled. "Yes. You even picked the color of your dress." She laughed. "I think I wanted a pink one." We both laughed then. It was the first real laugh in weeks. After dinner, she said something that stayed with me. She said, "I think I wanted to be chosen so badly that I forgot to ask myself what I deserved." I didn't reply. I only reached across the table and held her hand. She looked at me and nodded. That moment said more than any words. Autumn became winter. The cold came early that year. Snow touched the rooftops, and the streets turned white. Elena sent me a picture one morning. Her apartment window covered with snowflakes. Under the photo, she wrote, "Clean starts, like new snow." She didn't speak about the man again, not even once. It was like she had put him in a box and buried it. Maybe she still thought about him. Maybe the pain returned on quiet nights. But she no longer let it break her. I admired her for that. She had fallen, but she got back up on her own. Around Christmas, she started painting again. It was a hobby she had left behind years ago. She sent me a photo of a painting she had done. It was simple. A woman sitting under a tree, looking out at the sea. The colors were soft, but the feeling was strong. I asked her what it meant. She said, "It's how I feel. Quiet, but still here." At our family Christmas dinner, our father gave a small speech. He looked at Elena with proud eyes and said, "My daughters are my life." Elena smiled. She looked calm. For the first time in months, she looked peaceful. After dinner, she came to sit beside me on the sofa. She whispered, "I'm okay. I really am." I looked at her closely, and I believed her. Weeks turned into months. Spring arrived, bringing light and warmth. Elena and I walked in the park often, like we used to. One afternoon, while watching children play, she said, "I'm not afraid to be alone anymore." I said, "You were never really alone." She nodded and said, "I know that now." One evening in April, she told me she was thinking of moving. Not far, just to a new neighborhood. A fresh space, she said. I helped her find a small flat with big windows and a little balcony. When we visited it for the first time, she stood by the window and said, "This feels like a good place for new things." The day she moved in, I brought her a small plant in a white pot. She placed it near the window and said, "Something green, something growing." I smiled. "Like you?" She laughed. "Yes, like me." Now, when I think back to those hard months, it still hurts a little. I wish she hadn't gone through that. I wish she hadn't given her heart to someone who couldn't give her his. But I also know that pain shaped her into who she is now. Softer in some ways, stronger in others. We never told our parents the full story. Maybe one day we will. Maybe not. Some truths are too heavy for people who see you only in bright light. For now, what matters is that she's healing. She's making new choices. She's learning how to love herself again. And as her sister, that's all I ever wanted. She may have walked through a dark chapter, but she came out still standing. And every time I see her laugh now, every time she sends a picture of her latest painting or talks about a new book she's reading, I feel proud. Because she didn't just survive. She came back home to herself. If you liked my story, please like, comment, and share. More simple and emotional stories are coming soon.